I got to hang out with Dr. Bruce Deamer recently on the beach at Kaplankaya in Turkey. And Bruce is an amazing scientist, a humble guy who has spent his whole career trying to figure out how did life begin on Earth. And I got to tell you, this has been a very intriguing conversation. He and his co-conspirator, Dr. David Deamer, have figured out something that not only works as a hypothesis for how life began on Earth, but they've been able to reproduce it in hot springs. Bruce is also a brave pioneer of using psychedelics to change his own mind, to change his own life, and to help him with insights for scientific discovery. He has also since created the Center for Minds, which is an organization devoted to advancing scientific discovery, in part by helping folks use psychedelics and learn about using psychedelics to go places their minds just don't want to go otherwise. This is a bit controversial. It's been taboo for my entire life. I think it's a very important area to research. I really appreciate the people who are coming out, risking their own careers and the backlash of bias that people to help us figure out what's possible with this frontier in science. Bruce has really opened up to share his own life and experience with you guys, and I'm really thankful to him for that.
I've never met anyone like him.
He could hack anybody's phone in a matter of minutes. Who is that guy? Who can do that?
Thomas is the most interesting man in the world.
He's one of my favorite people on the planet. Inventor.
Wicked smart.
The master of cutting corners.
If you had a dead body in your trunk, who would you call?
He would get arrested immediately in a lineup.
I stood in line to get his autograph.
You know, his mouth can barely keep up to his brain.
I don't actually know what Pablos does.
A hacker magician.
Man of the future. Future.
So today you showed some dust from a meteorite, passed it around and had us all smell it, which I think is the first time I've done that. And if anybody was going to do it, it's probably me. So why don't we start there? Tell me what that's about and how do I get some meteorite dust?
That is from a meteorite called the Murray meteorite, which fell a few decades ago. And it's a carbonaceous meteorite full of organics.
Yeah.
And it's been dated to older than the Earth. So it's older than the parent body of the Earth.
Yeah.
It's full of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and amino acids and carboxylic acids. And it's the building blocks for the future living world.
Wow.
It's the smell, and it smells of deep, smoky kind of smell of a solar system in birth. It grounds people in the sort
I wanted
of deep
to
history.
say it was a more smoky WD-40 or something.
WD-40, right.
People don't want to feel like they're made of WD-40, but robots are made of it, so it's good stuff.
And then the other thing I handed out was the 3 billion-year-old lakeshore stromatolite, a lacustrine stromatolite with the microbial mat textures in it, to also give people the other side of the equation, which is here's what was feeding Darwin's warm little ponds, although it's updated for us as dry cycling hot spring pools.
Okay.
Being the engine to create life.
Yeah.
And then the other end of the bookmark is the stromatolites, microbial mat at 3.5 billion years ago. So we think that life could have started around 4 billion years ago, 4.1. There were certainly liquid oceans probably at 4.2.
Okay.
So the Hadean wasn't really the hell world of lava for very long. So it was just another era that we don't have any continental crust. We have no like rock record other than zircons.
So we take these two things together as evidence of the building blocks that you might need to create the Lego bricks of life at the very beginning. And then maybe historically we sort of thought, well, this stuff was floating around in the ocean and eventually got together. And now what you're saying is, well, it's closer to a version of what Darwin seemingly offhandedly posited, which is the ingredients have to go into a little warm cauldron and they have to cycle.
So in his letter to Joseph Hooker in 1871, he's just like this offhand scrolled out comment, what a big if and what a big if someone warm little pond somewhere with phosphoric salts and light, heat, electricity, etc., that a protein compound should form ready to go undergo more complex changes. He nailed it in the 1870s, and our science kind of ignored that instruction, if you will, or intuition. We went down many rabbit holes. One was the oparin, the idea of the primal soup. You have to get things together, but they thought it was sort of floating on the ocean top. And then you have the lightning experiments of Miller and Urey in the 50s, where they sparked a chamber, formed amino acids, very compelling.
Okay.
And then 1977, Alvin, the submersible Alvin, discovered the hydrothermal vents. And then there was a proposal in like 81, 82 for, well, maybe life could start there. But it never panned out, because you're climbing a thermodynamic uphill battle against hydrolysis, against the water paradox. You form anything, it's going to break down, and there are not sufficient gradients to do the work, even though there are chemical gradients and there are chimneys forming. And our colleagues just banged their heads against the wall, unable to make even like pyruvic acid on the way to amino acids. And finally, the field, like the paradigm shift, the Kuhnian paradigm shift, there was this piling up of objections from chemists.
Yeah.
Geochemists loved it, because anything with rocks in it, they're going to love. But they were actually wrong. And so by 2012, it was like the field was primed to move, to make a move. No results, no hypothesis, no evidence, nothing happening. And then Dave Deamer, my colleague at UC Santa Cruz, had demonstrated that wet-dry cycling alone can form basically the bonds between RNA building blocks and DNA, and then even peptide building blocks to form the proteins. And it just works.
So we'd tried things like temperature cycling, basically. We'd tried zapping it with lightning. But what we hadn't tried was wet-dried cycling. Am I missing something? What else is?
Chemists never think about drying their solutions down. They're always working in solutions. So this was a revolutionary idea for them. Although Sidney Fox and early people tried to dry down and bake amino acids to get them to form polymers, and it worked. Because if you remove water, you can form these condensation bonds.
Yeah.
That's what life does today. It uses ATP and enzymes to kick water out of the way, say, get out of the way, nasty water. I'm going to form a bond.
Right.
An ester bond.
Right.
So life is constantly dehydrating itself in order to form and fix polymers.
It's crazy to think about, like, almost everything you would make in baking starts out in a bowl with a lot of water, and it's gooey. And then you put it in the oven, and we think we're just heating it up, but a huge amount of what's happening is we're getting the moisture out and drying it. We're drying it in oven, and that's true for like a birthday cake or muffins
and for preservation. Mummies in Egypt, ancient grains, everything's preserved by drying. You have to remove the water.
Yeah.
And so that basically took the ocean vent hypothesis completely out of the picture. And so our field around 2015, when our hypothesis was first published, shifted back to land. We could see it at the annual meetings that we went to, and the frustration of some of our Nobel Prize laureates actually on stage saying, I'm sick and tired of this and that, and we need to get the chemistry to work. So Dave and I had done the laboratory work, and Dave with his postdocs and whatnot. And I said to Dave, we have to go out into the field. We have to take wet-dry cycling and go to where it happens in nature to prebiotic analogs.
Wow.
So we initially went to Bumpus Hill in Northern California.
Okay.
The steaming fumarolic environment. We did 2 years of field work there, 2 seasons of field work. Then he had gone to Iceland, he had gone to Kamchatka, and then I went to Yellowstone.
Okay.
And I took acidic and alkaline high silicate waters and formed protocells, formed the little compartments stably.
Wow.
Out of lipids that would have come from meteorite sources, the same as meteorite sources. Then we went back to Santa Cruz and we took seawater, filtered it, and it crashed all the lipids. So we published an article then talking about you can't form membranous compartments in seawater, but you can in a variety of hot spring waters. And that was a fairly revolutionary paper.
Would you characterize the wet-dry cycle as like a budget way of getting mechanical energy at the cellular level?
It's a little bit mechanical, but it's mostly energetic, thermodynamic. So the wet-dry cycling, it does actually everything for you. So if you can picture this, So you've got membranes floating around, some of which have turned into compartments. They're floating around in a little pool.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these monomers, organic solutes and everything that's just in the pool that's been constantly raining down from space.
Yeah.
It's actually synthesized in Strecker synthesis in hydrothermal springs anyway. It's all just sitting there. The pool dries down. The membranes start to contact each other, like they start to fuse. And then suddenly you're at this drying thing where you got this gel. Yeah. And what's happening is the solutes are being forced into, it's a feeding zone. The solutes in the pool concentrations have gone up like this. They start penetrating the membranes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that are trapped in the membranes too. And then they go to straight lamellar sheets.
Okay.
Now you're in Conway's Game of Life territory.
Wow.
You're in a freaking amazing chemical automata zone. And this is what we're proposing now in the 2024 is that sandwich layered lasagna thing is a supercomputer in the search for the circuits of biology. Because what happens is the polymers are now forming because water is leaving. It's a leaving group. And the polymers are now mobilized in these massive sheets. Wow. And the sheets are hundreds of layers deep.
Wow.
So think about that.
So is there 3D activity?
There's 3D activity.
Because they're going, I get it.
Things are also going down through the membranes. They're actually passive pores because some of the polymers are attached to the membranes. Some of them are mobilized alongside the membranes. So you have this, basically think of polymer A scraping along polymer B, looking for catalytic centers.
Crazy.
So it's crazy. We call it the progenitor. And it's the supercomputer. Now, here's a crazy one for you. If you take, and we can do this on a stovetop. Okay. You can do it in a frying pan. You can make this material. If you wet dry cycle it for just say 3 or 4 times, 30 minutes each.
Okay.
And you see that there's this slick now. And if you take like a cubic centimeter of that, say prebiotically, it's 4.1 billion years ago, and you counted the number of RNA or peptides or polymers and the number of compartments there, it's more complex by the numbers than the entire planet underneath it. So it's this non-local, incredible quintillions of distinct objects that are random sequence, but it outbids the complexity of a planet really fast.
Wow.
So what that means is that life started not in a simple way, but in a highly complex, ramified, networked environment.
Wow.
And it's a completely new conception. And think about it. It's the idea of the inventor's workshop.
Yeah.
So there's a guy named Fred Hoyle and his partner just sort of tossed away the probability of life emerging, saying, well, if a tornado went through a junkyard and assembled a 747, and that's a cliche. And it's not really correct at all. If you look at the inventor's workshop, Dyson in the 70s, huge workshop, bins of parts. He needed a vast array of random shit and parts, and then he had a workbench where he was trying to make the vacuum cleaner. He made like 500 or 2,000 prototypes, something like that. So he's working away, and the fact that he has an inventory of all this makes it possible to come up with something truly unique. So think of the progenitor at life with a huge inventory of random shit that's in free association. We don't need a crater. You don't need a Dyson sitting there. You can self-assemble and test quintillions of combinations per second in this engine.
Wow.
And by the way, this will go to our minds discussion. I was thinking about this on an acid trip about a year ago with our postdoc. This is California. We have an off-site retreat. Yeah. And suddenly this thing appeared in my mind because Dave Deamer, my colleague, invented nanopore sequencing, which is a big technology.
Great.
Now.
Sure.
It came to him in a vision in 1989, and now it's Oxford Nanopore.
Amazing.
It's amazing. So that we use that in our group because it came from our group.
Yeah.
So I said, wait a minute, our nanopore works by feeding polymers through pores, getting the voltage blockade, and then 70 millivolts or something like that, and figuring out which base has just been blockaded in the pore. That's how nanopore sequencing works. What if, and this is acid fueled, we put things in on the side of the sandwich and have them come out the pores? We can do combinatorial chemistry. We can put 1 million to X, 1 million reagents into that sandwich and stochastically only.
Yeah.
We're not talking specific mixtures or serial enrichment or something. We can try combinations and then pull them out of the pores and analyze them.
Wow.
It would be the greatest
AI coprocessor.
AI coprocessor for chemical circuitry, for discovering catalysts.
Wow.
And you have to deal with the fact that it's statistical.
Yeah.
But it's going to be six orders.
We have that problem already.
Yeah.
With AI.
It's 6 orders of magnitude faster than Affymetrix chemical robot that Lee Cronin would use.
Yeah.
6 orders of magnitude.
Wow.
So this is one of the insights I'm taking into our Minds Center.
Wow.
To go into Minds Ventures.
Yeah.
So all of these downloads and insights, including the ones from Origin of Life, which I did partly with ayahuasca, this is one for Minds Ventures from an LSD experience.
So go, just for context here, you had a legitimate scientific career and then decided to throw psychedelics into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
How has that gone for you? Has there been professional ramifications? I'm sure that a lot of people are not willing to attribute their discoveries to trips, whether they have them or not.
Right.
But I think we're at a different time in history now where maybe that's not as big of a professional liability.
Well, the way it went down for me is I kept it in the QT.
Yeah.
Until our papers were published, until we had literally shifted the field. So it became standard. I discussed this with Dave in advance. So the New Yorker called me in 2016 wanting this story.
Because they'd heard about it.
They'd heard about it through Dennis McKenna.
Yeah.
And I said no.
Yeah.
Because I can't risk my NASA review board work.
Yeah.
My funding applications, conference speaking, all that sort of thing. And the science was to be preserved. The hypothesis, the work. And then when I turned 60 in 2022, Dennis McKenna came back and he said, would you keynote our ethnopharmacologic conference in the UK? And I said, I think I'm ready. Here's the title of my talk, and it's High Time for Science.
Wow. So do you think you're 60, you figure I'm not going to make another discovery that big, so I'm not sabotaging anything too big? Or and I guess the counter question is, like, before that point, you probably really felt like you would be jeopardizing how the scientific community would accept this, this discovery, and you could jeopardize the impression people had of it.
Yeah, and I could find myself off the committees. But what happened was, so I did the talk.
Yeah.
Ford and Sylvia heard about it we were talking about meeting them in Austin.
Okay.
So that all started to start the nonprofit. I said, I'm coming out of the closet. It can help the next generation.
Yeah.
We need to have these tools for humanity, and we need to do the research, and we need to develop the protocols for how do you use them for psychedelic assisted innovation.
Yeah.
Like I've been doing, I've had maybe 25 journeys on different psychedelics. I've assayed them.
Yeah.
I've assayed and self-experimented with how much endogenous juices I'm putting in versus exogenous.
Wow.
I've studied over hundreds of experiences when the creative thing can come in, if it does.
Wow.
How to download it, how to sketch it out.
Amazing.
How to interpret it. And so I have my own protocols. And as we've been talking now publicly about this,
amazing,
hundreds of people have shown up from people whose lives were changed, businesses, families.
People have tried your protocols, or just anecdotally describing their own experience?
Anecdotally describe.
For people who wanted to try your protocols, have you gotten to do any of that?
I really haven't.
Yeah.
But in podcasts, I'm starting to share the protocols that I've done. People are actually writing multi-page protocol.
Great.
That they're using.
It seems so important. I don't play with this stuff, but a big part of it is I just think that it needs enough research to figure out how do you optimize that experience so that it's positive and good and low risk and all those things. And
I'm definitely was on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And so people like me have a fragility.
Yeah.
And so I didn't touch psychedelics till I was 37.
I see. Yeah.
And I met Terence McKenna. So Terence McKenna was my doorway and guide into.
Apparently more than just you.
More than just me, but we had a partnership.
Yeah.
We were really working together. So I was introducing him to cyberspace.
Oh, wow.
To virtual worlds and avatars, which I was one of the pioneers of. And then he introduced me to hyperspace.
Wow.
And we compared notes.
Okay.
And it was pretty wild. It was a wild ride for both of us.
So what do you think about the combination now of being able to use the psychedelics in conjunction with VR to really guide people and give them a good trip?
It's hard to say because when I've tried VR, it's all been such visual and disembodied.
I see.
That I find it takes me out.
Yeah. Okay.
But on the other hand, I'm not of the current generation of VR users. I did it in the 90s. I did all of my. But Terrence was interested to experience a virtual world to compare it with a trip experience.
Yeah.
And so we built this virtual planet for him, and from his house in Hawaii on his satellite dish.
Yeah.
He visited 30 people, and they went into a DMT trip to World for 6 to 8 hours.
On DMT?
No, it was the world was designed to look like a DMT space. And this is 1999.
Right.
So this is low res, but
DMT
3D
should be like 8 minutes, not 8 hours.
Right.
Okay.
And Terrence, for him, it was a revelatory because he wanted to meet his community without getting on a jumbo jet.
Okay.
Because he was getting exhausted from his travels. And late at night, I asked him, so how was it for you? And he said, it was not unlike DMT.
Okay.
That's a real Terrence way of saying not unlike DMT.
Yeah. It's not so much, I think, that replacing the drugs with VR has a lot of potential. I know people are experimenting with using lights and stuff to get them into different mental states. One of the big problems with psychedelics is just controlling your environment and making sure that you're in a positive, safe feeling environment. And it seems like VR is really suited for that. And then also making it interactive. Like VR could be made very interactive, could be married to some kind of EEG, see what's going on in your brain, tune the experience for that.
Well, here's a vision for you.
Yeah.
I called it the entheogenic singularity 2049. And the date keeps moving out another 10 years. Could you imagine a time where you wore this cap like a yarmulke?
Okay.
It could image all your brain regions, known as your mental organs, by Tom Ray. He's a great research scientist who created the theory of mental organs. Serotonin 7 is consciousness, the whole network, and serotonin 2 is the buffer. So people with an undeveloped 2 end up schizophrenic. And he's developed all this the last 25 years.
Wow. So it's internally consistent view of how the brain.
So what you then do, and this was my last conversation with Sasha Shulgin, who is the great alchemist who created a lot and self-tested a lot of these compounds.
Yeah.
The last conversation I had with him before he died was when I was walking away, I saw this rotating chip in space, this glistening chip. I was like, what the? It's a typical download for me. It's like a third eye just appears.
Okay.
And I felt it go into my shoulder.
Yeah.
It's like, what? And a day later, I figured it out.
Wow.
It's the Shulgin chip. And it came from looking in Sasha's eyes, and this is our last connection. I didn't know he died like 3 days later.
Wow.
And I have the Shulgin index.
Wow.
So I opened up the Shulgin index. I was like, a chip to make all these 2,000 compounds on demand, subcutaneous.
Wow.
That is controlled by your consciousness. So 2049, can you imagine?
Wow. Yeah.
So this is what happens. You want to get to the place where it's the super high.
Yeah.
And these are the places you get there maybe, if you're lucky, 5 or 6 times in your life, you get to the super high place of which memory cannot be operated. I mean, you are in a place. I know I'm going to that place when I realize, oh my God, I'm going back there. I thought I'd never go back there. And there's a screaming. Every cell is screaming, like the cat's holding on. No, not again, because it's so strange. And the body is just fighting it. And then you break through and you're in that space.
Wow.
And so in order to consistently get to that space, you could have the Shulgin chip make the right compounds at the right moment, figure out what your serotonin is, and then watch the mental organs firing up, optimize them with more drugs, and surf up toward that portal.
Wow.
And then there'd be an AR prompt. Do you want to share this with the overmind?
Yeah.
And you click on the yes, and your entire mental state goes into a cloud where there are 3 million other people navigating toward that portal. And we have now group tripping 3 million people are going to open the portal. And that portal is not just a tripping space. It is a light that is flashing off the planet that is like pinging the universe, like ping, ping, because it's presence on a massive scale. So we can wake up Big Daddy Cosmos in those moments.
Well, it sounds psychedelic, but I don't think you're wrong about where this goes. I think one of the really key insights there that almost nobody is even beginning to experiment with is this notion of the progression of drugs. Your brain is obviously producing different drugs in a sequence in different doses at different times to accomplish different things. And we don't even do that for like supplements. It's like take a handful of pills and dump them once a day or whatever. You're not even like take this, followed by this, followed by this, followed by this.
Yeah.
Attune those dosages. There's so much potential in being able to curate the ride, both physiologically and neurologically. That's what's got to happen.
And I think in the 40s, the 40s were, the Shulgin chip concept.
I love it.
Yeah. So there was a huge 2CB party held kind of in his honor the week after. It was like the largest ever single group 2CB experience. I think 800 people. 2CB was his creation. And I just blasted this story out to the group in the middle of all that.
Wow.
Saying the Shulgin chips, one of you here is going to be the entrepreneur, is going to do the startup. We need this technology. We need this level of drug navigation, delivery, refinement to go to places.
And we need like the fMRY, Yamaka.
fMRY.
So functional magnetic resonance
Yamaka. So we can all have our entheogenic singularities, but over and over and over again, predictably.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exciting stuff. It's really wonderful that you got to a point where you feel free to talk about these ideas, normalize them, share your experiences.
I didn't get canceled by the
scientific establishment.
In fact, a very renowned chemist called Dave about a month ago and said, so I hear Deamer, it's Deamer with a collaboration, uses ayahuasca for his science. And then I said, okay, Dave, what did he say anything else? Yeah. No, that was just it. I said, wow, that's the indication.
That's the endorsement you needed.
That was the endorsement. Curiosity.
Just lack of critique.
There was no critique.
Take what you can get.
Yeah.
It's one of these difficult kinds of things to get right. The sort of scientific establishment needs to get a lot of scientists up to speed, and they need to do that by inculcating them into a cult of science. That if you don't do that, you end up with these fringe wackos who don't assimilate to at least the conventions that are important.
Yeah, we need due diligencing, peer review, and frankly, hazing.
Yeah, right. You need the hazing. And so the problem is they've overdone it and institutionalized it. And so you end up with these heretics who are very important. I think what happens is the same machinery that's being used to keep out the fringe wackos is also being used to keep out the
mystics, the people with the superpowers. Yeah. So when I do these talks, I'll often get somebody in genetic engineering or a PhD student in this that is almost completely crushed by the bench work and by the hard knocks reductionist. Like there's no vision, there's no heart in it left for them, but they're pushing through because they've invested so much. Yeah. And I feel for them. Yeah. I say, you know what? Once you get your own group and you get free of that, you have the training. Yeah. So you can really deliver. You can loosen it up a bit and say, let's take on a big picture problem and let's use all the faculties we have and really go after something big. Because your seniors, they're just burdened with paperwork. They're just grinding through postdocs. 30 a year or whatever, fine. You now have your own group. It's a new era. You can use new tools that are more full-bodied, that are more mystical, they're more colorful, and you can make breakthroughs equal or greater than they've ever been able to do.
One of the big problems I see happen is there's some class of people who don't learn the vocabulary of the science they're dealing with. They think they have a
The theory of everything people.
The theory of everything people, that's a good example. It's not just them, but it's definitely a lot of them. And so they are expecting the world of science to learn their vocabulary, expecting everyone else to come figure out what the fuck you're talking about, because you haven't done the work to learn to convey it in the language that...
And what we need to do, and this is one of the missions of Minds down the road with our Minds Academy, is sometimes people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, they're baked. They're probably not going to go get a PhD, get the hazing, get the mentorship, and get the guardrails and actually validate and verify. I've met many of them. They're done. They're baked. They're halfway into the new age. They're halfway into some kind of thing, and they're not going to make a contribution despite their potential brain power. But the 15-year-olds, the 25-year-old who will get potentially crushed in the corporate marketplace, or perhaps even at the university, can we give them an alternate route? Or even if they're going through their PhD work, because they got to get the degree, we can give them mentorship and support and cautionary tales, and then focus them such that their powers of acuity will land. And so we're actually kind of calling that in the psychedelic realm, and it's not necessarily that they do psychedelics. That's a whole other question, but setting and setup. So what is your setup coming in? If you come in, garbage out, if you come in with a theory of everything in the universe, that is garbage, it's just going to get amplified. There'll be more garbage coming out. And then you'll be able to support a full cult with the garbage that you just generated. Not useful. It's like,
some people need a good cult.
Some people need a good cult. I had late night arguments with Terrence about the singularity in 2012 and all these sorts of things. I talked him out of it because he had a good sense of humor, but many people took it seriously that the world was going to end. And this Post-it note, December 21st, 2012. And I met people there that were just pretty bummed that they put all this energy into it. It didn't happen. And they wasted time. They wasted precious resources.
I think that if you're operating off of a prophecy, that is probably, there's some high probability you're going to end up there. But I guess the thing I was trying to get at is the people you described, they're over the hill as far as what they've learned. They're not going to contribute scientifically because they're not going to do that work. We see a lot of people that even young enough to do it, but they don't understand how important it is to get that grounding. Because I run into people all the time who want to know about or tell me about they use some frequency to cure them of whatever. And I'm like, cool, man. Maybe, but we don't understand how that works. You might have been one of the people who got lucky and discovered something that works, but since we don't understand the mechanism or anything about it, it's very difficult for us to lend any credibility to your experience. And they're not equipped to do it themselves. And then you see a lot of people trying to promote these ideas. It's this necklace, it vibrates at the same frequency as the mitochondria, and therefore you'll live forever, whatever. And so I guess what I'm curious about is how do you navigate that? I'm sure you attract a lot of those people, even more than me, and you attract a lot of people who are excited about psychedelics, they're excited about the mysticism, they're excited about these things, and they're taking it too far, or taking it, in my opinion, too far in a direction that we can't validate or haven't. And they're making decisions and they're making assumptions from that are fundamentally unfounded. They just map to their intuition or experience. I don't know. To me, I have a bad attitude about that. I don't know how to handle that. How are you navigating that?
What generally I do is precisely what you're doing, is I push back and I ask them to ask themselves the question, how can you go test this? Can you validate this with another group independently? And we keep going back at Minds to focus on solutioning. Does this generate a solution we can land in the world, not just Terrence's machine elves with shiny objects coming back? That's a whole other department. That's religious or belief or spiritual kinds of things. We're landing a solution in science and engineering and mathematics, design. If they're buttoned down type people that are really solutionist people, including business leadership. Those are the people. Everybody else, it's not on that path. It's not a solutionist. We basically say, look, this is not the academy. It's not the house for you. because this is what we are focused on.
Great. That's really great to have that clarification.
Yeah, limited time
about what
and
you're doing.
apply again, but it's like trying to get a job at NASA. You got to show that you have the capacity to be in that mission control.
Is there something you wish that people would, like some protocol you wish people would use for their drug trips to make them into better data for you?
It comes down to the setting and setup.
Yeah.
So for me, I did a ton of experiences just to work on myself. And it was basically the rupture that happened to me when I was given up at birth.
Okay.
So I was born, I was given up. My mother gave me to a charge nurse and took me to an adoption ward. That was it.
On the same day?
Yeah, right.
So
in the
as an
same
infant.
instant.
Okay.
So I was in this ward for 11 or 12 days.
Okay.
And then I was picked up and taken home by beautiful adoptive parents.
Okay.
So there was something that happened, but it's in the body's tissues.
Huh.
So there was a whole retraction. I was very dissociated.
Yeah.
When my adoptive mother, my parents took me home, she said the first thing she thought was, this one is in its own world. I had made a capsule. I was in, and adoptees are a weird bunch. They can be because of this. Because you don't have the smells of the mother, you have none of the cues, but you don't know that you don't have.
So my daughter's adopted at 8 months old. So when we got her, but you were adopted at 8 hours or something like her.
Yeah, minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, minutes. But you think there are real effects on you from that process, even at that age.
And I literally,
Wow.
I used every tool I could have, and ayahuasca was the key. So I did 35 sessions with ayahuasca over several seasons.
What symptoms did you have, or what was it that made you think you were searching for something?
So in my late teens and early 20s, I realized I was feeling no emotions whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
They were gone.
Yeah.
Like the concrete. So I was getting a lot done, but I could feel nothing. So I had to sort of work. I thought, this is not good, that I don't have any emotions. I can't feel down here at all. And as I started feeling,
because you had before and lost it, or
I had lost it.
Okay.
So through like self-discipline or something, because I'd been a raging kid, which was a sign of I would explode and things like this. And I got the control, and it was too much control.
Oh.
And I had really kind of the autism spectrum thing going, but they didn't have a word for it.
Yeah.
And then I could feel this hard knot in my belly.
Yeah.
If I went down there, it was always there. Like, what the? And with ayahuasca, I worked on the knot. So through multiple nights, the knot unfolded into an embryo. And it was the unborn me, the one that just went back, that never came out. And I had to birth it myself. So I rebirthed myself with the shaman over me with the leaf rattle and rolling, because I was doing hard work, and they can tell, they don't know what you're doing, but they can tell they're doing the work. Yeah, they do the assistance of getting it further.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful guy and down in the Peruvian Amazon. And so I managed to do that, and I was free.
Wow.
I could feel the clarity all the way down. It was done. But still I had the after effects of afraid to have eye contact with people. So I had to break through that. I did that in another psychedelic.
Okay.
Actually, MDMA.
Yeah.
Managed to break that fear of eye contact.
With the experience with the ayahuasca, that's where you discovered that this not in me, the dissatisfaction, the lack of emotion maps to this unborn child experience and being separated from my mother and adoption. That's the story that you got.
And then I got a good look at my inner kindergarten, which is the little cell, the internal family systems model, where it's like, you're a raging kindergarten of parts that are going back and forth. I could see them. I could talk to them. There's the part that's mental and is talkative and trying to get attention. And then there's the heart part, and then there's sort of a gut part in there.
Yeah.
It's like the multi-personality model which is becoming really dominant now in science and psychology. And it's actually the training people do before MDMA assisted psychotherapy, so they can know what's coming out.
Wow.
You are little cells.
Okay.
And they show up in.
So you have these archetypes in you.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that in a trip you would recognize them.
They come up. They make their needs known.
Yeah.
And there may be parts that have never been seen or felt before.
If you had gone home with your biological mother Do you have the sense now that something different would be different about you?
Very much. I mean, it was a raging, dysfunctional family situation.
The one you were raised in?
The one that I would have.
The one you would have
been
raised. Oh, that would have been worse, you mean?
It would have been far worse.
Okay, but that would have been far worse.
And I met my biological sisters and brother later in life, and they said, you were the lucky one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's tough stuff. I mean, look, I don't judge anyone for that. You do what you got to do. That's not what I'm trying to get at. What I mean is you seem to ascribe some of these effects that you experienced in life to the fact that you went home with an adoptive family instead of a biological family. And some of it's positive. The nurture part's not positive, presumably, or more positive. But that experience of being taken away from, I mean, you're so young. It's like...
You don't have memory of it.
Yeah, like no one has memory of it, or at least it's hard to believe if they do, that they remember the day they were born. But like my experience, you only get one. I only have one experience with adoption, really. And like I said, so 8 months old, much later.
Mm-hmm.
But even at that age, there's a real attachment process that a kid has to go through. She was 8 months old. She was 16 pounds. That's low. She couldn't sit up. She had correctable health issues, but nothing serious. And we would go to the orphanage. This is in Ethiopia, pick her up and spend a little bit more time with her each day over a week or so. And she wouldn't take a bottle from us. And so it made no sense to me. I'm like, you're a kid. You're a baby. Your whole worldview is get a bottle. I have a bottle. I'm trying to give it to you. Nothing. Wouldn't take a bottle from us. And we'd go back to the orphanage, and in like the most cliche possible scene of white people at an orphanage with a black kid in Ethiopia, you get a translator, we'd get the nanny, we'd ask the translator to ask the nanny, like, hey, how do you give her a bottle? And we would like, fork over the kid and the bottle, and the nanny would stick the bottle in the kid and everything was fine. We just couldn't understand what was going on. But even at that age, and this is, again, 8 months old, the baby's able to tell bottles come from like black ladies in white clothes, not the other way around. And so it took her, we were sort of getting a little anxious about this because we had to fly with her and she needs to take a bottle from us. But a weekend she took the bottle and all that part was good, but it still took probably like 4 months. The first 4 months of her being with us until she was 1 were excruciating.
Yeah.
I mean, you give her a bottle, she's slept, she's got a clean diaper, she's got toys and somebody rocking her, everything a kid could want, and she's still screaming inconsolably. And of course, we feel like total failures as parents because we don't know what the fuck we're doing because we're new parents. And I think everybody who's adopted has some story like this. But the point is that attachment process is real. She knows that something's up. She can't explain it because she's a baby, but she knows I'm supposed to have some support. She's trying to figure out if you're really committed to being the support. And so the attachment process is very difficult. And that's as easy as it gets, I think, because she's an infant. And she did get through it and everything was fine. She's like, we're fully fucking attached. But I know that it gets harder and harder and less successful the older the kid gets.
Yeah.
We know that by 3 or 4, it gets really difficult. And past that, it gets impossible. And it's a very difficult thing for people who adopt kids. But on day 1, you would think none of that would matter. But I guess maybe day 1 isn't really day 1. It's day 270 or whatever. And so there's already some of that.
And yet in the end, so for me, my own story, putting it all together, I've realized, because you read your own boot sector.
Right.
By doing this work, I realized this is why I'm the way I am. This is why I'm in my own spaceship. I'm in my own spaceship, so it gives me a power to travel, to realm. This is why I can travel back 4 billion years and think about and become the protocell, which is what happened during the ayahuasca experience. I literally was the birth of the first protocell attempting division.
Wow.
And saw the process and worked backwards. To work about where did the protocell come from? How did it get to this place? On the verge of the birth of all life, because I had also worked on my own origin and birth in a beautiful, intimate, personal way, I could then turn around and work on this beautiful, huge thing. And so I came up a term for it. First the healing, then the revealing.
Wow.
And I think this is universal in village culture in the Upper Paleolithic, that there was a shaman character that would arrive in the village, and there would be some kind of family dispute or illness or something. They would work on the healing part.
Yeah.
And then they would bring the community together for the ecstatic dance or the medicine work, and to reveal their culture, their ancestors, the wisdom, the path forward.
Yeah.
And this was baked into human culture for at least 300,000 years.
Yeah.
That this was going on, this healing, then revealing, healing, then revealing. And that's how communities invented their tech. And that's how they move forward. That's how they determined what mountain range to go over.
Yeah.
And so, in a way, the return of psychedelics is pulling forth that original primal thing, but we really have to actually bake it in properly.
Wow.
And this is what you're pointing out. For the minds thing, for our multidisciplinary, our nonprofit is we have to prepare the minds, prepare the bodies, prepare their heart space, prepare their community support, their mentorship, their intentions, because some of the people that come into their first psychedelic experience are going to quit genetics, right? They're going to quit the thing that is crushing them, because they're going to go in another life direction.
So this is not patterned after a typical scientific institute.
No, and in fact, what we're doing at Minds is...
What's the scope of Minds? I don't understand.
So the initial scope of Minds is the research.
Okay.
It is like MAPS. So MAPS sponsored the research at different groups to prove to the FDA that this is a benefit to society, to hopefully this year get it descheduled or Schedule 3 by August. A new drug is approved.
Wow.
DEA is ordered to take it off Schedule 1.
Great.
Goes into off-label prescription, and there are 5,000 clinicians or assisted psychotherapists trained and ready to go, and it's a game changer.
Wow.
Boom. Huge.
Is this just for MDMA or what?
That's just for MDMA.
Yeah.
Psilocybin's going to follow.
Mm-hmm.
LSD is now back in the research pipeline.
Wow.
So we are rolling.
Wow.
So that's the medical efficacy demonstration and the safe and sane protocols, because MDMA increases blood pressure, and we really know. So it's not just raves.
Yeah.
Where people can have serious problems or
Sure.
die in a hot tub because they get renal failure. We don't want to do that.
Right.
And so what Minds will do is take from that playbook and say, we need to research this from a creativity aspect.
Yeah.
What elements of memory does this enhance, and what does it actually degrades memory, but then with free association memory. So what is going on inside the brain that allows us to be creative on what substance? And psilocybin, particularly, or the tryptamines or the indoles, or the which ones work in which mixtures, what drug delivery.
Yeah.
A shit ton of research, hundreds of studies.
Yeah.
We really want to sponsor hundreds of studies.
Wow.
And then we start getting all that data in for safety, which patient or which user populations. And it's not really patients, because this is mostly well people that are going into this. And FDA is really open to this.
Great.
They're really open to these post-therapeutic applications. There's a whole push there. And every research group we've gone to so far, including the one that we're about to fund next month, the first study will be funded next month, has said, we want to pivot our lab and go into this direction.
Wow.
They've been doing therapeutics for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Now it's time to add this. They're all really excited. And this is the top researchers on the planet.
Wow.
Yes, they've told their grad student or their postdoc, commit time to that. You're approved. I totally authorize this.
Wow.
So group after group after group, let's add that in. Now, here's the magic thing here. If we're going to have 200,000 to 2 million people going through MDMA, and then that's in theogenics rather than psychedelics, and then psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, guess what?
Yeah.
They will obtain a healing, a clearing of the knots in their bellies, such that they will go into unique flow states, just like Jamie Wheel talks about.
Yeah.
And they will have increased acuity and capacity for a period of time. So what we can do is back in the MINDS protocol on top of MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for MDMA-assisted flow and all those sort of states.
Wow.
And other groups will be doing this because we can't just be the one. We can't be running the academy. We can't be running all those things. But we want to provide the guidance from the research so that there could be a million organizations that are doing this, but they're using the MINDS protocols which have been verified.
Great.
Now, MINDS Ventures is exciting, and this is why Ford's so excited about it. And a lot of the...
Who's Ford?
Ford Smith, our co-founder. He has a psychedelic and venture investment firm.
Oh, okay.
So Ford and Sylvia are my co-founders.
Yeah.
And they have been, basically, they financed the formation of the nonprofit.
Wow.
And we have a fantastic staff. We have a large and growing donor pool now.
Yeah.
So the donor raise is happening as we sit here.
Great.
In Turkey. And people are joining the board.
Wonderful.
Really top named
Well, good
people.
luck. That's awesome. Yeah.
Entrepreneurs, business people.
I was thinking a cool thing to do, because I'm a little more radical than you even, is just open up what I call a psychedelic theme park offshore in like Costa Rica or on a cruise ship or something, 12 miles out in the ocean where you don't have the FDA jurisdiction. And then you would just have almost like a Instagram park where you got different rooms.
Yeah.
You know, one could be like full of trees.
I think I've seen a cartoon.
One could be full
School is Hell poster that shows the psychedelic theme park.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that shows the Munchies zone.
Yeah, Munchies zone. Exactly. You'd have registered nurses to help chill you out on beanbags if you have a problem.
Well,
hook you up to IV.
There are psilocybin retreats now in the Netherlands for business leaders, Mexico.
Wow. So legit.
It's all happening.
All right. Yeah. Well, it doesn't need my help.
It's happening.
Well, cool. We get all that going. Then we end up with this set of protocols that we could use to take super educated, super creative people, get them into a mental state where they might actually be able to get to a breakthrough that they can't get out of their own way to get to otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we could really scale up some of the scientific discovery that's like
it's a little stalled
under
out.
our noses.
Well, it's so stalled out. Like since 1980, there's a Harvard Business School study that shows that the disruptive patents and papers have crashed. So we are in a low innovative period.
Yeah,
just
I believe
when
it.
we need, because everything's so compartmentalized and it's actually more costly to do innovation now.
Yeah.
So we're actually needing a little high octane fuel.
Great.
In the innovation world because we've got more challenges.
That's so exciting. Huh.
Yeah.
I believe
we're in a period of low innovation.
Yeah,
not
I
high.
believe it. I know. I get it. Yeah. I have to go far and wide to find the true breakthroughs, you know?
Yeah.
You're basically focused on origin of life. You got the psychedelic stuff going, which is almost a separate track at this point.
A separate track. But drawing
a chance to...
I'm the storyteller. I'm the avatar in a sense. The canary in the mine.
There you go. You're the sacrificial lamb is
yes.
The analogy of choice. And so what about co-conspirators? Have you found other scientists who've been able to have a parallel trajectory on the sort of legitimization front? Or you feel like you're the only one so far?
In every public talk I give, there's a line of people.
Yeah.
And I spend usually hours with them.
Yeah.
And one of the first questions is, am I crazy?
Right.
This is what I do.
Yeah.
Or that I have this ability on the naturally. Like they have an endogenous tripping ability, which I had. I have that endogenous tripping. Be taken over by a vision. So I'd say about 75% of my scientific and engineering insights are all endo trips, endogenous internal trips. This is why I avoided psychedelics till I was 37, because I didn't want to mess it up.
You find this happening to you.
Yeah.
And what triggers it, or just?
It can be as simple as like a walk in the woods or mowing the lawn, but I've been ruminating on something for a long time.
Okay.
I can feel it coming. It's like when it comes, it's like, wow. It's like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I'm just taken over. So when I started talking about endo tripping on podcasts about 10 years ago, I got dozens of detailed reports from people who also endo trip.
Intriguing.
And so they have this natural ability, and it might be a DMT or serotonin flush that's going on.
Yeah, pineal glands dumping DMT.
The dream molecule. And so I actually self-experimented with Aya, going to low doses and then turning on what I think of as my endo-tripping machinery.
Okay.
Turning it on and flushing together with a low dose of Aya, and it worked.
Wow.
It was.
Why did you think that would work?
I thought that it would be a marriage, that I could use the monoamine oxidase inhibitor in the microdose of Aya to help the endogenous system produce more DMT and keep it, concentrate it, because that's what MAOIs do.
Okay.
And it really worked. So the year or two of my ayahuasca was all low dose.
Yeah. Great.
Endotrip, max endotrip with energetic work, presencing work.
Wow.
So I call it winding the vine, where I had 6 or 7 systems.
Amazing.
So it wasn't just all medicine, just
sure, yeah.
all
and
the
less
time.
vomiting and all the, yeah.
It was a co-conspiracy, I know you use that term, with the medicine and other practices to go farther.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just beautiful.
So exciting.
Yeah.
What about microdosing anything? Do you think that, I mean, you're talking about taking a small dose of something, but do you find there's something to the notion of microdosing in daily life or for different conditions? Or
here's the surprising thing. We have hundreds of anecdotal reports of, say, people microdosing psilocybin and curing their depression, which is a huge deal. But there are no definitive studies.
No studies.
There have been no dollars.
They haven't been done, or they haven't been done well, or what's...
There's been no dollars coming that way.
Yeah. 2
or 3 studies were done on microdosing that were totally inconclusive. And yet everybody has all this anecdotal work. So one of the things that Minds wants to do is raise capital to do proper microdosing longitudinal studies and say, because it's the dosage and there's the Stamets stack and there's this and that.
Right.
And we just don't know. And because we need to do the science.
Do you think Paul Stamets is full of shit?
No, he's
I'm just kidding. I don't
he's
think
extraordinary.
No one says that.
He's an amazing
really
force of nature. Yeah. For a period of time, I remember, this is about 10, 12 years ago, he said, I don't want to talk about psychedelic mushrooms anymore. He had kind of gotten burned. Well, he'd gotten burned a few times.
If I remember correctly, he doesn't do psychedelics, does he?
I'm sure he does, but his words are, nature provides, I don't.
Yeah.
Because many people are asking him for sources.
Oh, yeah, I see. He's not selling them.
He's not.
Yeah. That makes sense.
They've done such good work on their studies.
Yeah.
So they've dozens of studies at this point.
Wow.
In major journals. Yeah.
Great. Amazing stuff. Yeah. He's not the only one, but he seems like the only one. Like he took a whole field of mushrooms and ran with it. And it goes in all these directions. Never mind the drugs. You got mushrooms for food and supplements and solving all kinds of problems. And nobody else was even paying attention.
Was there to fill the space.
Yeah.
So you can see pictures of him in the 70s and 80s, like this big, all these shaggy guys.
Yeah.
And there was a whole community that had their secret conference. And people thought mushrooms are absurd. Even Terence McKenna said, the reason I'm not in jail is because I'm talking about mushrooms, and the powers that be probably think it's so absurd. It's absurd. It's laughable.
Right.
He can't be serious. He's a mushroom guy.
Yeah.
Timothy Leary was speaking to stadiums full of 100,000 people about "We've got America surrounded" in the 60s and 70s. So he was a threat.
Yeah.
But Terence was because the mushrooms sort of considered not serious.
Yeah. Amazing. Any questions for me?
Yeah. What is your draw? Have you partaken in these realms, these magisterial realms?
I never felt like I was short on inspiration. I also never started with any kind of drug. Like I have never had a cup of coffee in my life.
Right. I noticed your espresso machine is unused.
Yeah,
there.
I've never had coffee. I've never had a drink of alcohol. I've never smoked a cigarette.
You're like our future president, past and future.
Yeah. Oh, is that true? I don't know.
Trump claims to have never had a drink.
He's a teetotaler. This was kind of a haphazard thing. I mean, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I drink Red Bull.
Right.
So I have a Red Bull once a day, and I smuggled it into the resort here because it's just caffeine. I need a caffeine source.
Yeah,
and I don't I got hooked on caffeine eventually, and I like the caffeine. I don't really have a problem with it.
I take knickknacks.
What are those? Nicotine?
Subcutaneous nicotine.
I've been thinking about starting a nicotine. How's that gone for you?
They're pretty phenomenal. They're powerful. It's a natural
pouch that you put in your.
It's actually better. It's like a natural products one they're shipped to you from Washington State, and they just,
all right.
And I find them too.
Knickknacks.
Knickknack. Yeah, you just buy them online.
So I kept starting to try and dig up any research on this, and most of the research on nicotine is on smoking and other forms of ingestion. But I figure if I'm just getting the nicotine without the carcinogens, then how bad is it? That's what I wanted to know.
It's really healthy, and it provides this incredible mental clarity bump. I have many friends in business that they don't do coffee in the morning. They just take a knickknack, and then you cruise for about it's like a whoa, and then you're cruising for about 2 hours. You're clear as a bell.
Wow.
Stuff is flowing. Like when I was developing my script for my talk at Harvest, I had a knickknack each morning.
Wow.
And when I did my first
rehearsal,
I had a knickknack.
But here's the thing. If I'm in a lab and I want to cause cell mutation, I'm going to put shit in the microwave or I'm going to hit it with nicotine.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought the nicotine must be part of the problem. But I don't know. There's no studies I can find that show that it's that unhealthy. It's like probably as benign as caffeine.
It's as benign as it's probably more benign.
More benign. All right.
And it can be quite a rush. I mean, I'm only taking like 3 milligrams.
3 milligrams.
It's quite intense.
Great. Well, look.
You can try one. I can bring you one.
So to answer your question, I did drop acid one time. I thought it was a more controlled situation than it turned out to be. So it was partially amazing, partially frustrating, but just because I didn't have the help I thought I would have with it. And so I was annoyed about that. And I didn't understand what I was getting to. I thought I was like, oh, this will take like 4 hours. And it was not 4 hours. It was like probably at least 14 hours, and I wasn't set up for that. So I'm like getting more and more anxious about, I got to go pick up my kid in the morning. So a lot of those kinds of problems. And it was not ideal, no major problem. I can see why people get so much out of it.
Mm.
I didn't get any breakthroughs. I was not focused on anything that I'm particularly suited for anyway. I ended up at a nightclub having a great time. But I've always felt, and I still feel in some sense, like I'm short on time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm short on focus. I can focus, but I can't focus because I have too many things. But I'm not short on inspiration.
Yeah.
So I don't think I
wasn't either.
Yeah.
So I reached 36, 37, and I thought, I'm just busy. I'm cranking stuff out. I'd already done 5 years of work for NASA on mission design. I had a company and a nonprofit. I'd done a ton of stuff.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? There's something there.
Okay.
These worlds, a high dose psychedelic trip, I've got to go and check it out.
Yeah.
And Terrence provided me the mushrooms. I took an enormous amount.
Okay.
Because I didn't have a scale.
Oh, wow.
Later on, it's get a scale, Terrence would say. But I just ate as many as I could stuff in my system. I was on my own.
Oh, my God.
Out in the Southern Sierra. I picked this spot.
In nature,
In nature, near a hot spring. On my own, my buddy was down in the hot spring.
Okay.
And I took some. The first night I took like a normal dose. And I noticed it was just beautiful fractals and all this sort of stuff. I said, that's not enough.
Yeah.
I want to go to a space. I want to contact something higher, either in me or in the cosmos or something. So then the next night I just ate the whole bag, just ate the whole thing. And it was phenomenal. It changed my life. It changed me as a human being, sort of down to the root level. It relaxed me.
Mm-hmm.
I sat on a pile of rocks by the river the next day and everything was moving and alive. And I thought, I'm complete as a human being.
Yeah.
So I lost that whole trying to be good enough thing. I got better at everything. So after that, it's like you went to the cosmic ignition and back and felt this immense experience.
Yeah.
And it cleaned my clocks.
But you didn't go in with the specific goal of addressing any of these things.
I just wanted to check it out.
I certainly feel like I'm good at the things I want to be good at. I don't want to risk that. And so I don't really want to have my brain rewired.
Yeah.
And so to me, that doesn't sound appealing.
I was really reticent about it. So actually, when I went in on the first trip, I purposely shut down what I think of now as my endotripping machinery.
Yeah.
I powered it off. And after 10 years of different psychedelics, I got into the low dose territory. And that's when I powered up my normal visionary system in the middle of a psychedelic experience. And because I was now in low dose, but I actually I put it offline, put the firewall up.
Yeah.
Because I was really reticent about that. And I was 36 and I was a fairly mature adult at that point.
All right. Well, I would love to do this for hours, but your ride's here.
It's such a pleasure meeting you here on the mountaintop.
Yeah, good stuff.